So therefore, as a result, your cohort gets cut down to whatever your program's in pretty quickly after orientation, and as a result, very strong social cliques exist in this building. Between the students and faculty and then the students from different departments. And as a GSA member, it's been very hard to try to figure out ways we can break down those walls because they're culturally built into Hines at this point.
And then Hines itself is so segregated from the rest of campus.
Mm-hmm.
Same stats and man-sci, there's no real discussion where you might learn about other people, their experiences in critical analysis of policy research and Sylvia's classes, though I honestly didn't feel as comfortable in Sylvia's classes speaking it, but I think that was maybe unique to me. In those classes, there seems to be more of a focus on discussion, but the other ones that are more the technical skills and the math stuff, they don't, or even the accounting and stuff like that, no one says, back in my accounting days.
Yeah, and I do think discussion could be really well incorporated into those classes, and I would love to see there are a lot of very technical classes where there are a lot of serious ethical implications of using those technologies, and those conversations don't take place within the classes that teach the technology. There are optional elective classes that no one has room to take where you can talk about the ethics of technology.
Yeah, it's because they have to fit it all into 6 weeks. There's no time to have those discussions and also get the curriculum done.
What about outside the class? I'm sorry, go ahead first.
Well, I was going to say, in terms of, I think professors try to encourage that in some of the classes that you do have a mix. Because, I agree, as a MAM student, I mostly see other MAMs, and then I'll take the class that's not specifically for my program, and it's me and my 3 friends, and I have no idea who anyone else is. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the professors will then randomize our groups in effort to be you have to talk to people, which is great. But then there is no effort to introduce us to our groups. So I am given a list of 5 names. Some of them are, I can kind of guess the ethnic background based on the names. But then I look around and I have no idea who I'm supposed to talk to. And so it's not. And then when I do finally figure it out, I'm cool. Well, I have 5 minutes, so let's group project, and I'm never going to see you again. And so there's no, it's an effort, but it's a half-hearted, I pushed a randomized button, as opposed to
It feels very superficial. You're not able to make a meaningful connection.
Yeah.
And I think if you went downstairs right now, you would see, it would look it would look very racially segregated. It's all of the, the students from India, they all kind of hang out together, and all the students from China hang out together, and all the students from the U.S. kind of tend to hang out together. And that's always disappointing, I think, to see. I say hi to the people that are in my C squad and stuff, so I still have conversations with those, and if I'm in a group project that's more than just a class period, then you form a relationship, and those have been I've really enjoyed that experience. But it is always a little disheartening to then go downstairs into the common area, and it's very clear where the different kind of groups are.
We've been, our career advisor last year very much was very encouraging of hey, make sure you're being inclusive, make sure you're helping, it's October, make sure that the international students are feeling comfortable, but it's always it's hey students, make sure you're doing this, which basically is invite them to your parties, and so we do, and then it's on them if they come or not, and our cohort, they come sometimes, but there's not a Heinz, it doesn't feel supported by Heinz, it's kind of hey, you should do this if you're a good person, not we're going to facilitate making you cohesive.
The thing that I have here where I can benefit from learning from other people are student-driven, and I think that's wonderful, and but maybe a vision of a stronger Heinz would be one where there's an expectation for all students to participate in conversations around diversity and inclusion, because it ends up being the same people, which is okay because that's a community that we're building and we're doing that work. But I think to make this place stronger and better, it's like building the culture that allows every individual to see why diversity and inclusion matters. And then also that equips those people to be better at speaking up in incidents when things are happening, saying, I actually am obligated to speak up about this too, not just students of color or other folks that are, have a oppressed identity.
Do you feel, and this goes to what you were talking about too, is there a tension between finding a community of people that you relate to versus learning from people from a different community than you? Is it easier to do one than the other, or is the balance off?
I can only speak from my experience, and I am white and, I think move through the space differently than a lot of other folks. I will say that it was harder for me to find a community of folks, but just because I didn't really know what it took a long time when I first got here to figure out what was happening, again, because it's all student driven. There's not great kind of institution level messaging, so that's very specific to me.
One comment I just wanted to make on that as well is the school has tried to make some efforts. Obviously, we're having this discussion here. I'm not sure what they'll take out of it, but we had the lunch with the dean each quarter, which fundamentally seems like it would have been a good idea. If you talk to anyone that was here last year's were horrible, just because it was not set up in a setting that was conducive for either side to really have a conversation. So it just became yelling, which is never how you solve a problem. And then as a result of that last fall, the one in the spring, and then the one this fall that happened, there was 9 administration people there, and the marketing person would reiterate everything to always have a positive spin. And that's not helpful to anybody either. I don't need a marketing guy in the room to make sure that the dean doesn't say something wrong. The dean should know when he says something wrong.
What?
So.
Yeah, and then the request went from legitimate. I think last fall it was kind of more structural concerns to then in the spring it's well, we'd really like those lights to be a little bit brighter, or it was these rooms are kind of cold, so it it
killed it.
Yeah, it was such a horrible experience in the fall that ever since then I think people have been very afraid to voice actual concerns.
I was gonna bring up the Dean's Lunch too, because we have a program-specific one, because we're technically a joint program, but that's a whole nother problem. But in that, it's a conversation, but it feels like every time a concern is raised, it is the explanation of why your concern is not valid, or join a club, are the messaging that's pushed back to us, instead of any sort of responsibility.
We never met our other dean.
Oh yeah,
we
the
only met
CFA
one of our
is gone.
deans. They never introduced us to the other one. He was this mysterious man.
Well, he left now.
Yeah, But it's what's happening there? Why isn't he obligated to come and meet us and listen to our concerns when he's equally our dean?
Adding on to the join a club suggestion, I think on the one hand the clubs are a better space right now, but on the other hand, I think it's really important, particularly in a school that does policy and does arts management. I think it's absolutely essential that has to be a responsibility of the institution. Someone should not be able to graduate with a public policy degree without without ever having had to think deeply about issues of equity or inclusion or any of that. To me, I feel kind of fraudulent when I say I'm getting a public policy degree. People ask me oh, what kinds of policy are you? I'm oh, we don't have policy classes at my school, and that's a slight exaggeration, but it's. I mean, you can see it. This won't show up in the recording, but everyone's kind of going with their heads because I think that's the general consensus is that there really aren't many policy classes here, and I don't think there's anything where you do have to think deeply about these issues if you don't want to.
You have a 6 o'clock class.
I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I was just going to wrap up right now.
Yeah.
So like I said, I'm doing 2 other groups. Today we invited 2 people who were majority race. I'm also doing a group with our minority race as well as with international students. The way we do the analysis is, so I'll be creating a transcript and I'll be doing a qualitative analysis on that transcript. We'll be looking for themes both across students within each group as well as themes across